And many UK homes, the dining table has become one of the most quietly overworked pieces of furniture. It is rarely just a place to eat. It might host a quick breakfast before work, support laptops and paperwork during the day, and then stretch to accommodate friends or family at the weekend. This gradual shift in how dining spaces are used explains why extendable dining tables have become such a common consideration rather than a specialist choice. British homes are often asked to do more with less space. Dining areas are frequently part of kitchens, living rooms, or open-plan layouts, and very few households want a large table permanently occupying valuable floor space if it is only needed occasionally. At the same time, most people have experienced the discomfort of trying to seat extra guests around a table that simply isn't big enough. Extendable dining tables sit directly between these two realities, promising flexibility without constant compromise. The idea itself is appealing, but the real question is whether extendable tables actually improve daily life in UK homes, or whether they introduce new frustrations that outweigh their benefits. The answer depends less on the concept and more on how the table fits into the rhythm of the home it lives in. For many households, the strongest argument in favour of an extendable table is how unobtrusive it can be when it is not in use. When closed, it should behave like a well-proportioned everyday table, leaving enough room to move comfortably, tuck chairs away neatly, and allow the space to function without feeling crowded. In smaller dining areas or open-plan rooms, this balance can make a noticeable difference to how calm and usable the room feels. The advantage becomes clearer when hosting enters the picture. Rather than rearranging furniture or squeezing people uncomfortably, the table adapts to the moment. This flexibility is particularly valuable in homes where entertaining happens occasionally rather than regularly. Buying a permanently large table for a handful of gatherings each year often leads to wasted space the rest of the time, whereas an extendable table allows the room to reflect everyday needs first. That said, extendable dining tables are not automatically the right answer for every home. In some spaces, a fixed table of the correct size can feel simpler and more satisfying. Homes with a dedicated dining room that is used frequently for larger groups may have little need for extension at all. The value of an extendable table lies in how often the extension is used and how easily it integrates into daily life when it is not. Understanding the reality of space in UK homes is crucial here. A small dining area is not always about square footage. It might be a long, narrow space where circulation matters, an open-plan room where furniture needs to visually recede, or a kitchen diner where the table sits close to walkways and appliances. In these situations, being able to keep the table compact most of the time can make the difference between a room that works and one that constantly feels in the way. Even in larger homes, extendable tables can still make sense. In open-plan layouts, a table that is always fully sized can make the space feel heavier than it needs to be on a day-to-day basis. A slightly smaller closed table can help the room feel lighter and more balanced, expanding only when the occasion calls for it. The key is to think of the closed size as the real table, not the extended one. If the table feels too large or awkward when closed, the extension becomes a poor consolation rather than a useful feature. When chosen well, an extendable table should feel entirely natural in its everyday state, with the extension acting as a quiet bonus rather than the main event. This is where many decisions succeed or fail. Extendable dining tables work best when they respect the space they sit in and the routines of the people using them. When they are treated as flexible everyday furniture rather than a hosting solution first and foremost, they tend to earn their place more easily in UK homes. Once the idea of an extendable dining table makes sense for a space, the real differences begin to show in how those tables actually work day to day. This is where many experiences diverge. Two tables can look similar on paper and still feel completely different to live with, largely because of how they extend, how stable they feel, and how comfortable they are once people are seated around them. One of the most important factors is the extension mechanism itself. In well-designed tables, extending feels intuitive and unremarkable. The table opens smoothly, the extra section sits flush, and the whole surface feels continuous once it is in place. In poorer designs, the process can feel awkward or heavy, enough that people avoid using the extension unless they absolutely have to. Butterfly extensions, where the extra leaf folds away inside the table, are popular in many UK homes for good reason. They remove the need to store loose sections elsewhere, which is particularly helpful in flats and houses where spare storage is limited. When the mechanism is solid, these tables can be extended quickly by one person and returned just as easily, making them practical for everyday living rather than occasional effort. Tables with separate extension leaves offer more flexibility in size, but they do require somewhere to keep those extra pieces. In homes with garages, utility rooms, or ample storage, this may not be an issue. In smaller homes, it can quickly become a nuisance. If the extension leaf ends up hidden away and hard to access, the table's flexibility becomes more theoretical than real. Stability is another area where quality matters. A common concern is whether an extendable table feels as solid as a fixed one once it is opened. A good extendable table should feel just as secure in both positions. This depends on the strength of the frame, the support beneath the extension, and how well the mechanism locks into place. Problems tend to appear in tables where the extension relies too heavily on the tabletop alone, rather than being supported by the structure underneath. Over time, this can lead to movement, sagging, or an uneven surface, all of which are especially noticeable when people lean on the table during longer meals. Leg placement also plays a role in comfort once the table is extended. Some designs place legs close to the corners, which can make seating awkward when additional chairs are added. Better designs anticipate this by allowing enough space for chairs to sit comfortably without forcing people to straddle table legs or sit off-center. Comfort around the table is not only about legroom. The surface itself should feel continuous and pleasant to use. Poorly aligned extensions can leave ridges or gaps that catch plates, glasses, or hands. While these details may seem minor in a showroom, they become much more apparent during real use, particularly during longer gatherings. The way an extendable table affects room layout is another practical consideration that is often overlooked. When extended, the table temporarily changes how the room functions. Walkways may narrow, furniture might need to be moved, and circulation patterns shift. This is not necessarily a problem, but it does need to be anticipated. In many UK homes, extending the table means borrowing space from elsewhere in the room. That might be an area normally used for passing through, or a spot where a sideboard or chair usually sits. Understanding this in advance helps set realistic expectations. A table that extends beautifully but renders the room unusable during gatherings can quickly feel frustrating. Material choice also influences how an extendable dining table performs over time. Wood and wood effect finishes remain popular because they tend to age gracefully and disguise the joins between sections more easily. Consistency is key here. The extension should match the main surface closely enough that the table still feels like a single piece when opened. Painted and composite finishes offer a more uniform look and can be easier to maintain in busy households. They often work well with extension mechanisms, as the surface remains visually consistent across moving parts. Glass-topped extendable tables can look striking, but they demand precision. Any misalignment becomes immediately visible, and maintenance can be higher in everyday family use. Ultimately, the practicality of an extendable dining table depends on how naturally it fits into daily routines. If extending feels effortless, the table remains stable, and the room can accommodate the change without stress, the flexibility becomes a genuine advantage. If the process feels awkward or disruptive, the feature risks becoming underused. TLDR, extendable dining tables are worth it in many UK homes because they let the room stay comfortable day to day while still expanding when life gets social. The key is to treat the closed size as your real table and the extension as a bonus. If the mechanism is smooth, the table stays stable when open, and the material choice suits everyday use, an extendable table tends to earn its place quietly over time. Where hosting is frequent and the table is always extended, a fixed table may be simpler, but most households benefit from the flexibility. Do extendable dining tables hold their value over time? Extendable dining tables often make more sense the longer you live with them. UK homes change. Work patterns shift, children grow, rooms get repurposed, and hosting comes in seasons. A table that can flex with those changes often feels like a smarter, long-term buy than a fixed table that only works for one version of your life. That long-term value depends on build quality. A stable frame, a mechanism that still runs smoothly after repeated use, and an extension leaf that stays aligned all matter more than most people expect. When these are right, the table becomes a reliable piece that adapts without fuss. When they are wrong, the extension becomes something you avoid rather than use. Mini summary: extendable tables hold value when the mechanism and frame are built to last, not just to look good. Everyday compromises to know about before you buy. Even the best extendable tables bring small trade-offs, and it helps to understand them early. Some designs carry extra framework to support the extension, which can make the table heavier to move. Others have seams that are barely noticeable when new, but become more visible over time, depending on material and finish. There is also the practical reality that extending a table changes how the room works for a few hours. Walkways narrow, chairs need more clearance, and sometimes furniture has to shift. In most homes, this is manageable, but it is worth thinking through, so hosting feels effortless rather than awkward. Mini summary: the compromise is rarely the table itself. It is how the room behaves when it is fully open. When a fixed dining table is the better choice, extendable tables are not always the answer. If a home has a dedicated dining room used regularly for larger groups, a fixed table sized for that room can be simpler and more cohesive. If the table is almost always used at its maximum size, a fixed design removes the extra mechanism and can feel more straightforward to live with. A fixed table also suits buyers who prefer fewer moving parts and want a single, uninterrupted tabletop finish. In some interiors, particularly where a table is treated as a long-term anchor piece, fixed designs can feel more settled. Mini summary: if you always need the bigger size, a fixed table may be the cleaner decision. Common mistakes people make with extendable dining tables. The most common mistake is choosing based on maximum capacity rather than everyday fit. A table that is too big when closed will dominate a room, even if it extends beautifully. Another is forgetting to plan the extended footprint. Chairs need space, people need to move, and doors still need to open. Storage is another issue, particularly with separate extension leaves. If the leaf ends up hidden somewhere awkward, the extension stops being used. Finally, build quality is often underestimated. A poor mechanism can turn a good idea into a constant irritation. Mini summary: the best extendable tables feel right when closed, effortless when opened, and stable in both positions. FAQs: are extendable dining tables sturdy enough for regular use? Yes, when they are well made. A good extendable table should feel stable in both positions, with proper support beneath the extension so the surface doesn't flex or wobble. What size extendable dining table works best in a typical UK kitchen diner? It depends on the room, but many UK homes do best with a closed size that seats 4 comfortably, with an extension that seats 6 or more for hosting. The key is leaving clear circulation routes when the table is closed. Are butterfly extension tables better than separate leaves? Butterfly extensions are often easier in UK homes because the leaf stores inside the table, which avoid storage problems. Separate leaves can work well if you have reliable storage and want a larger extension length. How much space do I need around an extendable table? As a practical rule, you want enough space to pull chairs out and still walk behind them. Before buying, mark out the extended footprint and include chairs, not just the tabletop. Do extendable tables look less premium than fixed tables? Not necessarily. Many modern extendable tables look seamless when closed. What affects the finish most is how well the extension matches the main surface and how cleanly the mechanism closes. Is an extendable dining table worth it if I only host a few times a year? For many households, yes. The value comes from keeping the room comfortable the other 300+ days, while still being ready for those occasional gatherings.